A record-breaking petition, as I understand it, with over 200,000 people signing this petition to call upon the government to cease all financial and other support for asylum seekers. In this video, I will discuss briefly what I think will happen. Well, there's a short version and a long version. The short version is I think nothing will happen, but the longer version I think needs a little bit more discussion. So please do stick around. Please do subscribe to the channel. I will be your brutally honest view of what's going on here. Now, just as an aside very briefly, some people ask me why I talk about politics. Well, all laws can be made and unmade in the Westminster Parliament. It's the supreme lawmaking body, and it can make and unmake any law. The only thing it cannot do is bind a future Parliament. So what our government and Parliament as a whole is doing is very much your business. It's very much my business. It is almost literally my business, because the work of lawyers rests on the law made by Parliament. And of course, our judiciary, via common law. Watch the comment section go crazy now. So that is why I have to talk about politics just recently. Now, I have to say, I get a little bit frustrated when questions are not answered in Parliament, especially in Prime Minister's questions, when it's the idea is you ask a question, you get an answer, and we don't get answers these days. So I understand that it's cut and thrust of politics, but I'd appreciate an answer now and again, even if it's a, let's say, to put it mildly, it was a little bit of a divisive question from Sarah Potchin of Reform. I'll come back to that in a moment, to which there was no answer. Now, on the one hand, I can understand why there's no answer from Keir Starmer, because it's a very divisive question. On the other hand, it's Prime Minister's questions. It was a question to the Prime Minister. It deserved a serious answer. Now, far be it from me to tell the Prime Minister what he should be saying and how he should be responding to questions, but I think people would have preferred an answer, even if the answer is what I think the vast majority of people would say, but I'm not going to tell you what I think people would say. I'll give you the either side of that coin. We'll come back to that in a minute. Back to this petition here. So this petition calls upon the government to cease all financial support. Now, the way these petitions work is once it gets 10,000 signatures, the government responds. That's usually with a written response, which is usually the party's default position on whatever that policy and situation is, and that's all you get. You get a regurgitation of whatever it is. Just like the VAT on schools fees thing, you got the standard response that they put out in their normal policies. So don't expect more than that just for 10,000 signatures. At 100,000 signatures, it's considered for a debate. That's no guarantee it gets a debate. It's considered by the petitions committee as to whether it's worthy of a debate, just like the call a general election petition got, what was it, 2-3 million signatures or something, and that was debated, but ultimately nothing happened. And so, as I've reminded people just recently, these petitions and even referendums are not legally binding. Even the Brexit referendum was not technically legally binding. It was just a referendum to see what people think. They said at the time they will honour what the people voted for. And so it was a bit of, let's face it, was a bit of a car crash. And I've said many times, I voted Remain. But that's not to say I didn't think that the Leave decision could have been implemented well. I think it could have been, and don't think it has been. And so I think we're in a bit of a mess, quite frankly. But ultimately, I don't think anything will happen with this petition. But why are people so bothered about this petition? Well, because you will have seen the countless headlines. For example, investigations, and this is why we absolutely must have and maintain a free press at all times. The Telegraph, in this particular situation, did an audit of 110 local authorities, finding that newcomers to hotels, as in asylum seekers being housed in hotels, were given game consoles, yoga classes, DJ lessons, football match tickets, and all sorts of other things, spending hundreds of millions of pounds on these things, when, let's be blunt about it, you and I are going to pay for our own out of after-tax money. So we've got to go and earn our money, whether it's a business or a job. You've got to pay all your taxes, and then when you spend it, you're spending it in after-tax money, and all those are taxed as well. And there's countless taxes on those. So we are, by the time you get the money, it's a relatively small fraction of what you originally earned to buy these things. They get them for free. A lot of people find that that's not fair. With the usual caveat that some people that come here deserve help, etc., etc. But my long-standing view on that is they should stay in France and they should be taken back to France because that's where they came from. And if France don't stop them getting into France, that's their problem. And if they don't stop them leaving, well, that is still their problem. We should take them back. But that's by the by. But now to the question that's not answered, which is why Ultimately, it saddens me to think that Parliament and the whole system is a bit of a waste of time at the moment. And aside to that, I think the whole legal system is slow, dated, clunky, expensive, and extremely difficult for people to navigate. And with great respect to the vast majority of you watching, unless you're a lawyer, you probably have no idea where to start, even with the smallest of small claims. So you want to claim a few £100 or something, you may not know where to start. It's being made slightly easy with the Money Claim Online service and everything else. But anything slightly more complicated than that, you've got to read into the rules. Judges will say you should read the rules. You know, cases have decided no special treatment for you just because you don't understand the rules. But if you don't understand the rules, you need to ask a lawyer, and that's hundreds of pounds an hour. Yes, I qualified as a lawyer. Yes, I did it because I enjoy law, but it's also because it pays well, to be quite frank. It does pay well to be a lawyer because it's very specialist, it's very difficult, and so you do get to charge a high hourly rate. Do I charge that? Yes. Do I think it's fair? Well, for most people, no, I don't. I don't think it's fair that most people have to pay that. But that is the market rate. That is just what you have to pay to get formal legal advice. Now, I think the whole system's a bit unfair, but it's even more unfair when we get a parliamentary system like this where they just don't answer the questions. Now, like I said, far be it from me to tell ministers, especially the Prime Minister, how they answer questions, if they answer questions, and what they say to those questions. But I do think this was worthy of an answer. And he may have been surprised. He may get overwhelming support with the answer had he provided an answer. So I warn you, this is a divisive question, and me playing this to you is not to say that I agree with the question or disagree with the question. That is not my place to say. It doesn't matter what I think, because my opinion is just that of one person. The whole point of Parliament is to represent the opinions of the constituents as a whole across the country. Bearing in mind, bear this in mind before I play this to you. We have 650 MPs, and it looks fairly full at the moment. So 650 MPs on a salary of just shy of £94,000 apiece. The Prime Minister on a base salary of something in the region of £172,000. All of those taken together, the tens of millions of pounds that we pay all the MPs to sit in Parliament and not to get an answer, I think it does deserve an answer. But let me play you the question, see what you think.
Sir, Poachin. Yeah.
Given the Prime Minister's desire to strengthen strategic alignment with our European neighbours, will he, in the interests of public safety, follow the lead of France, Denmark, Belgium and others and ban the burqa?
Yeah. Prime Minister.
Can I welcome her to her place? But I'm not going to follow her down that line. But now she is here and safely in her place, perhaps she could tell her new party leader that his latest plan to bet £80 billion of unfunded tax cuts, there's no idea how he's going to pay for it, is Liz Truss all over again. Although, considering I think she was a Conservative member when Liz Truss was leader, she probably won't.
So on the one hand, I can fully understand why Keir Starmer would not want to answer that question, being divisive as it is and so on. On the other hand, it's a legitimate question. It's, will you follow other countries around Europe and do the same thing? And there are two sides to the answer to the question. On the one side, a very legitimate standpoint of public safety, but that applies just as equally to somebody wearing a balaclava. Because for those of you that may jump on, I mean, with great respect to you watching, you may not fully understand what a burqa is as against a hijab or a niqab. If you don't know what they are, I would suggest looking at what they are and then come back to the question. But there's no real difference between that question and, let's say, banning balaclavas or those bike delivery guys that drive around with a full face mask on and so on. So there's two sides to this question. The one is public safety, and the other is we shouldn't be telling people what to wear. And so, again, your view is your view. I'm not here to tell you what to think. I do think that this was worthy of an answer, even if the question was very divisive, rather than if you can see David Lammy and Lucy Powell in the background there laughing at the answer to the question. I think this was an opportunity for Keir Starmer actually to win support, because I think he could win support depending on how he phrased the answer and what he said. Just my view. I think he could have won support there and still answered the question. But that's not the only thing. You see, Sarah Petition posed this question. I don't know whether she realised or not, but it's apparently, reportedly, not the position of reform in any event. because a spokesperson to, I think at least the BBC here, said that it is not party policy, but it is an issue that needs national debate, presumably for the reasons that I've just said, because there are two sides to it. There should always be two sides to a thing, and certainly for a debate. But then we had Lee Anderson saying, should we ban it and no one should be allowed to hide their identity in public? That's fair enough. But again, with the caveat that that might miss the fact that some people go around in balaclavas and they should be equally banned if that's the case. But then we have Zia Youssef saying, as in Reform chairman, saying nothing to do with me, had no idea about the question, nor that it was party policy, busy with other stuff, which he probably is. I do think it's dumb, he says, for a party to ask the PM if they would do something that the party itself wouldn't do. So I find all that a little bit bizarre. We have a question from a new Reform MP, which is not the party policy, but they would consider it national debate material. Then we have the chairman calling it dumb to ask that question, and we have the Prime Minister not answering the question. And at the same time, it's entirely possible that a lot of people simply don't understand what the burqa is and therefore what banning it would mean. And bearing in mind, if you are fighting for freedom here, for example, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom to do the things you want to do, for example, I just put this out there as a suggestion. If you are fighting for somebody to be able to say what they like and express themselves in any manner that they like, and for example, should not be criminalizing certain behavior, for example, the burning of the Quran, I've said I think is abhorrent. I don't support it, but I don't think it should be criminalized. At the same time, if you're arguing that they should be able to do that, but banning certain clothing for someone else, they don't really go together. And that is why this is supposed to be an open debate, which is why I think it should have deserved an answer to the question. But that's just my view. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. This is the very heart of a democratic society, to discuss and debate things and have different ideas. And I'm not here to tell you what you're supposed to think. I'm not really here to tell you what I think, because it doesn't really matter what I think of these things. I do sometimes because I feel the need to, just to clarify that I'm not pushing one side or another. As an advocate, I will do my level best to tell you both sides. There are some fors and against, and that is the very purpose of debate. If you love debate, by the way, I have some exclusive material as a channel member. If you join on my channel below, there's a join button below. If you hit subscribe, I think then it turns to a join button. You can join the channel as a member. There's some exclusive content there about how I would teach debate skills, advocacy skills, court skills, how to navigate the court system, and so on. Much more in-depth videos that frankly would not get many views if I put them out as a main channel video, and that kills the algorithm somewhat. And if you want to learn how to do YouTube, check out my wealth channel, Daniel Shansmith, below as well. And if you do want my personal views, you can find them over on BlackBeltSecrets, link below as well. And with that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.